A pleasure to meet y'all at last. And so today, it's January 12th, and I've basically got something different in accordance with a new mini-series that I started that's probably going to be somewhat Nerf Secrets Revealed related. But today, Tears of the Clown brings you yet another little presentation that has to do with ranking blasters from a very specific line. And, well, that line would in fact be Ultra. A line that has been around for well over 2 years, but has since gotten very big. And I could sure tell you that while this year is certainly going to be bringing us some things out there that most people might not find very exciting when it comes to new Nerf products, I for one feel that this is a pretty big time for Hasbro to reconsider having a lot more support and liability towards their own fan base. So without further ado, let's get the tier list going. Bam! And now, I'm basically just visible on the bottom right corner again, and here is the tier list. Ranking from S to F, we got ourselves 13 different Ultra Blasters. It's currently unknown exactly what we'll be able to see pretty soon when it comes to Ultra Blasters, but hopefully we can get more of them as time goes on, because Nerf really does need to give us whatever we can possibly get. So starting off from the first ever blaster that had started it all, the Ultra 1, an October 2019 blaster that introduced the Ultra Dart, a new proprietary ammo that would in fact be a bit of a successor to others. The main function that this one dart gives us is, simply put, a new kind of ammo that can fly way further than others, but also give us a whole different flight pattern due to its propeller fin design in the back, but then also utilizing lightweight foam construction as a way to prevent it from potentially falling too quickly and being dragged on by the wind. And so, the Ultra 1 was pretty much the startup for this whole entire thing, but it is important to note that a lot of people out there, all sorts of YouTube creators, do not at all like this blaster. And there's probably a few reasons for this. I myself have also owned one of these up until I sold it not too recently in order to pick up other blasters, but the thing is, when I owned the Ultra 1 myself, it did have itself a pretty good standard of having a pretty big drum that was capable of holding over 20 darts at once, and not to mention a little storage space in the stock, which could hold up to 8 extra darts. And so, you'd be carrying a lot of Ultra Darts with you to begin with. But many people might not like this blaster for a couple of things, including the ergonomics. Its stock is a bit stubby for the most part, as I've mentioned before during the Super Tears of the Clown presentation, in which that its stock was way too short for someone of my stature. And the same thing could probably be said with the Ultra 1, but in this case, it actually does in fact offset a lot of other things that would have potentially been good about it. And I'm not just specifically talking about the large capacity that this blaster uses, but also with the fact that it uses C batteries as a way to power its flywheel system instead of D batteries, which are sometimes way too heavy. And while it does allow for balance of weight from the front to the rear of the blaster itself, C batteries aren't necessarily used all too often these days. So it's probably not going to be too common of an example, but the Ultra 1, being that it started off with a price tag of 50 American dollars, it probably wouldn't have been too much to find out what you could pretty much get that was worth your money at the time. But yet, because eventually the Ultra series had in fact gotten better over the past year and a half, it's safe to say that while the Ultra 1 was a bit of an introductory phase for this new lineup that Hasbro wanted to show to make a bittersweet yet bigger marketing strategy towards their own fan base, Hasbro really does have a lot to consider, because the 1, to me, does not necessarily possess much more than just the capability of firing darts from a drum with flywheels. And so, being that it's probably not as good as it probably would have been back in the day, I feel like that by this point in time, it's safe to say that this one deserves a D. But now we're going to move on to the rest of the line itself, beginning in early 2020 with the Ultra 2, a 6-shooter with a flywheel system akin to the Ultra 1. Being a smaller size blaster with a price tag that's half as much as the 1 at around $24.99, the usage of 6 Ultra darts inside of a small cylinder in the back, and not to mention flywheel power that really does define how an Ultra Blaster could be so significant. The way I see this, the 2 has way better availability than the 1 does. Not only for the fact that it's much cheaper than the 1, but also with the fact that you could in fact use a motorized flywheel system 6-shooter. And the fact that you could actually have something like this nowadays is probably not going to be too common, but for something like this, the Ultra 2 has a lot to desire. But as I've mentioned before though, a lot of people are not going to be in favor of the Ultra series, especially for a lot of conspiracies put together. And I'm not surprised, being that the internet is literally filled to the brim with trolls, hackers, conspiracists, and many, many other problems. So, I'm just giving it my all though at this point. So this blaster will be put right in B, specifically because it's a great blaster overall. Now let's move on to the third blaster that we have, the Ultra 3. This one, however, had a bit of a delayed release compared to the 4 and the 5, which I'll get to soon, but the Ultra 3, compared to the Ultra 1, which is a bit more of a drum-magged machine gun sort of blaster, and the Ultra 2, which is meant to be a 6-shot revolver with flywheel action, this one is in fact an 8-round magazine shotgun, an inline clip, and a large pump grip on the bottom. That does in fact allow for some simple functionality, but yet it goes a very, very long way. In case you're not aware of the fact that I had a series called Nerf Secret Reveal Distance Gauge quite some time ago, as a matter of fact, this series did in fact have a handful of Ultra Blasters in it. The Ultra 1 did not get good range by any means, considering what its battery power was, and the Ultra 2 would not be featured in it altogether. So while that might be upsetting to some of you, the Ultra 3, however, proved to be a way better example when it comes to Ultra Blasters being showcased in terms of their range claims and whatnot. And the Ultra 3 did in fact get only as far as 88 feet with its maximum shot. But that was only because I was utilizing it in average adverse weather conditions, as well as just simple straight shots, not necessarily angling it while wind basically carries it around. I feel like that the thing here with 120-foot range claims on Ultra Blasters is that that actually seems to be the maximum potential. So when they say shoot up to 120 feet, they're not necessarily suggesting that it will in fact shoot over 100 feet directly. But yet, if you were to simply time it right with the wind patterns that you might have, then at an angled shot especially, you might be able to get an Ultra Dart to fly that kind of distance. But altogether, I'm not necessarily going to go off on such a bold claim like this. But yet, as far to my knowledge, the Ultra 3 has had a lot of lies put on it. And being that I was able to get my hands on one of them quite a bit later than usual, the fact that I actually found out that there were so many lies taught about this blaster, like how you pump it back and you can injure your trigger finger, and then you push it forward, you can injure your knuckle. The fact that Drac actually literally went that far on YouTube last July just to point those things out, it's just so sinister the way I see it. Absolute clickbait. I'm more than glad that I unsubscribed from Lord Draconical, because otherwise that would have been a serious problem in my life. If such horrible conspiracies, awful things that are being made up about a simple toy, just like that, if they were to continue, then who even knows? It sets a horrible example nowadays. And the way I see it, the Ultra 3 really does deserve better. So you know what? Call me generous or whatnot, but it was a great blaster in 2020. And it's certainly one of the best blasters that I actually own in my collection because of all the harsh lies and conspiracies and the like stuff that was made up about it to begin with. As such, it's going all the way up to A. So, come at me. Next, let's move on to the Ultra 4. This one is supposed to be almost like that of a Night Finder if you were to put it in the Ultra line, as it can hold one dart in its muzzle and it can hold an extra 2 darts on the sides. But unfortunately, the priming rod capability does not necessarily work in the same way as most other blasters that utilize priming rods on them, especially Mega and Elite blasters, because this blaster in particular utilizes a priming rod that instead actuates forward once pulled back, to indicate pretty much that it is in fact a locked sort of air restrictor with a large heavy spring that can allow air pressure to build up very great, and once you pull the trigger, it sends a dart flying. As I've mentioned before in distance gauge, the darts that I fired from the Ultra 4 literally went over the 100-foot mark. And I could not make this stuff up. You could also check out that episode in case you want to do so. But the thing is, the Ultra 4 was just incredible. Its power, its unbelievable condition, and not to mention the fact that it simply went well above the 100-foot mark, it really does send quite a big example to anybody out there who still wants to go ahead and claim that this is a blaster that is not going to fire at 120 feet because the Ultra Series is a bunch of lies and all that. Well, no. Y'all are the liars out there. There's a wonder why so many trolls and people out there are setting a horrible example on YouTube and elsewhere. And so, because of all this, I'm not really going to give it as big of a score as the 3. It's only going to get a C on that part. And so, let's go ahead and move on to the 5. This one's a bit of a slight upgrade over many of the other blasters out there, having a 4-dart internal clip, very similar to that of the Magnus. As a matter of fact, Lord Conical actually went as far as to nickname this the Ultra Magnus. Yeah, pretty much a big reference to the Transformers character of the same name. But yet, other than this strange old thing where Nerf had to reskin a lot of blasters out there just to get a lot of mileage, I'm not really going to go off on a bat to say that that's a bad idea, because there's always a lot of ideas that Nerf might have, but unfortunately, patenting them only goes so far, especially with the handful of competitors that seem to be doing better than Nerf, like Dart Zone, Adventure Force, and Buzzbee Toys, pretty much. Lots of competitors in the world of dart blasting toy guns, in the way, are certainly pretty abundant by this point. And the fact that so many people are willing to just quit Nerf to move on to other brands like that, it's kind of sickening just to know that people are willing to go this far, yet only go at a certain direction. And I'm not really going to go off and say that that's probably a bad idea. I'm just not going to go off on that sort of path and give in to the horrifying conspiracies that everybody's going to put out there. They are, in fact, trolls, absolute deceivers, and all that. But yet, for a blaster that has a large knuckle duster in a way, a big handguard, a nice slide that goes back and forth, and an inline clip that can hold an extra dart, one more than the Magnus itself. But for a 4-dart inline clip Ultra Blaster, the 5 really has a lot to desire, just like with many of the others. So let's go ahead and send it on up to the C tier, pretty much. It seems that I'm being very good here with this series so far, but the lineup itself actually does get way bigger and way better, because let's go ahead and talk a bit about the Ultra Dorado, otherwise known as the 8. Because I'll mention really quickly that there were in fact plans for an Ultra 6 and an Ultra 7. Both of these were never actually made. The Ultra 6 only got as far as to showing us the price tag and Nerf might have abandoned it at some point because it had never been made, nor had it ever been showcased. As for the 7, well, it also got the price tag for us, and there was even a stock photo that had showcased its design, pretty much. But yet, as I will talk about shortly, the 7 did in fact become reincarnated and brought along with a different sort of design and re-released as another blaster, which is called the Pharaoh. But going back to the Dorado, the Ultra 8, because of course you probably know by now exactly how I feel about this sort of thing where Nerf is in fact trying to change the names and all that, basically attempt to change the trademarks and the rules to all that sort of stuff. As horrible as that pretty much is, the 8 is in fact a blaster that happens to take the shape of the Ultra 2, yet add a bunch of plastic all around it. It adds a bit of a stock in the back, it adds a bit of some weird stuff on top, iron sights it's supposed to be like, and not to mention a lateral hand grip. But aside from this sort of strange old clunky funky redesign of the Ultra 2, the Dorado itself happened to be a bit of a different idea that Nerf had, but unfortunately, as far as its release status, it never got an American release. It was only released in most parts around the world. But I don't necessarily understand why that actually had to happen right there. Because if all the other Ultra Blasters were to be released in America, why not this one? I guess I'll probably never know for sure. So you know what though, just because of this one thing out there, this one simple problem that could have been avoided, I'm only going to give it a D. So I sincerely apologize for that, because time to move on to the Ultra 9, or, well, this is pretty much what the Pharaoh pretty much is. A bit of a redesign of the Ultra 7 with some new parts on it, because it basically takes some things out there and it uses some gold pieces out there. And then of course there were also its own exclusive standalone darts, which of course were golden Ultra darts. I simply refer to them as Gold Star darts. In addition to that, you also got the Screamer darts, which are blue tipped as opposed to orange tipped. And these ones are supposed to act like the modern Whistler darts that pretty much scream as they fly through the air. But in terms of the Gold Star darts, the Ultra 9 does in fact give us a bit of an exclusive sort of feel. The fact that you can only get these kinds of Ultra darts with this blaster, as far to my knowledge, there aren't really any refill packs on this sort of thing, but if there were any refill packs, we're probably not getting a lot of news on it. And maybe that's probably something else we'd have to look into. But at the moment, I'm not really sure how that's supposed to take place. The Ultra 9, however, is an amazing blaster. And I could basically say that all the time, but that's only because an Ultra Sniper Rifle with the scope that you unfortunately cannot detach, but that's pretty much alright because everything else seems to make up for it. It's nice, slide action with the bolt on the side, very similar to that of the rival's Jupiter, but also with a 12 dart, well, ultra clip. An ultra clip that can in fact fit 10 rounds, or is supposed to fit 10 rounds, but if you really were to finick enough with them, you could probably get a maximum of 12. But it would be a very tight fit. So, sorry if you think it's 12 or 10, it doesn't really matter to me, but this blaster is just that impressive. It has a nice color scheme to it, gives us some sort of exclusive feel with the Gold Star darts, has itself a clip system put into it, and also just being an Ultra Sniper, how can you not like something like this? And so, let's go all the way by giving this one an A. So, right up there with the 3. Now it's time to move on to the 2021 catalog of Ultra Blasters, which goes on to the Ultra Amp, as well as the Scream Machine, the Select, and the Focus. Of course, I've had all these ones renamed as well, rightfully so. The Ultra Amp, which I refer to as the 10, as it's currently the 10th blaster in the series, is in fact very much like that of the Strife. The Strife that in fact has an integrated holographic red dot sight, which doesn't really have a red dot on it, but it does have a bit of a sort of molding to imitate crosshairs in a way, and not to mention its own exclusive 6-dart ultra clip. Very different from that of the 10-dart clip that the 9 pretty much came with, but for the fact that this is a strife with a grip, a sight on top, and its own sort of clip, and not to mention you could even attach your own stock to it. This was the first time that you could ever attach a Nerf accessory to an Ultra Blaster like this. It was the first time that you could attach a stock attachment to it, whereas with most other Ultra Blasters, the only reason you'd have a tactical rail on it was because you wanted to add a sight or maybe a dart holder. If any third parties were to be able to make Ultra dart holders like what the Barrel Break had given us, then it probably could have been done. But for the 10, I'd say it's a pretty good blaster, but only because of the fact that it can be a bit more modular than most of the others, and also having a bunch of other things that we didn't really expect to see in an Ultra Blaster. But of course, for most reasons out there, especially when relating to a lot of the things that had happened in 2021, I will not necessarily be able to give it that high of a score. It's still a good blaster, I will have to admit that, but there's really a lot of things out there when it comes to learning about the year 2021 in general that millions of people, especially in the next several generations, will have to get to know about very, very soon. And so, let's give this one a C. Moving on to the Ultra 11, the Scream Machine, as some people will indefinitely call it, is in fact a little more than what you might think it is. This is in fact what you do if you were to make the Dorado, the 8, if you will, an American release. It is in fact a bit more than you might think about it. It's essentially just a reskin of the 8, but instead of having most things on it, it actually does come with its own set of screamer darts. And not to mention, it also has some blue accents to it, as well as some decals, decorations, and the like. And this was pretty much the first time ever that Hasbro has released an Ultra Blaster outside of the typical Ultra color palette, which includes colors like white, orange, black, gray, yellow, and metallic gold. This of course includes blue and metallic blue, or sapphire pretty much. But at least for being the first ever reskin to another Ultra Blaster, but also being a different color palette as opposed to the typical color palettes that we've gotten with Ultra Blasters already, this one's also a pretty good blaster. It'll also be important to note that this will make an appearance in the upcoming Nerf Secret Revealed sequel to Bolts of Intrigue, but we still have until 2025 until that becomes a reality. But until then, expect this blaster to make an appearance in here. But for this presentation, let's give it a C pretty much. So at this point in time, let's just go ahead and move on to the others that came out in 2021. As far as I know, there's probably not going to be much in 2022, but let's go ahead and talk about the 12, or the Select. I've mentioned before that the Ultra 6 would actually have an appearance almost exactly like this, except a few things would probably be different. The way I pictured it in my mind, it probably would not have had some strange old handguard thing that the 5 did, and it probably would have also had only one magazine slot instead of 2 like this one does. But the reason why many people call it the Select, and the main purpose for that, is because this was basically Nerf's way of giving us a couple new things. One, an Ultra Dart that happens to be more accurate than all the others out there, because all the people who have made bold claims about Hasbro's Ultra line, calling it a lie, and that Hasbro had lied to us about the Ultra line, is not only one of the worst things that a person could ever say about it, one of the worst lies that anybody could put out on the internet, from what I know, but it's also quite an extreme hypothetical theory. Little more than a conspiracy from what I can tell from my ethical experiences in life. But in this particular case, this is Nerf's answer to all of those lies, all of those claims, by simply giving us a brand new type of Ultra Dart, known as the Pinpointer, But of course, Nerf is in fact kind of backing out on that and simply calling them Ultra AccuStrike darts, because nowadays we do have refill packs for those. I kind of wonder why we're still not getting any refill packs for the Gold Star darts like the ones that came with the 9, but anyways. Nerf also basically put in flyer darts, as I call the original Ultra darts, alongside the pinpointers. So that's two different types of Ultra darts that this blaster comes with. With a $62 price tag, an Ultra blaster that has motorized full auto capabilities, two different 10 dart magazines, two different types of ammo, and then of course with it having some other functionality put together, I'd say it's not only worth the price, but this might as well just be considered one of the best, or from the way I see it, the least worst blasters of 2021. And that pretty much is a lot that I'm saying about it just for something like this. But the way I see it, it's time that we go ahead and give this one a B, just because I feel like this was a great thing that had happened when it comes to Ultra blasters entirely. And finally, let's move on to the most recent one that we have so far. Up until the point where Hasbro announces that there will be new blasters in the line pretty soon. But until then, here we go with the Ultra Focus, or the Ultra 13. This is yet another example of a reskin taking place in the Ultra line, but unlike with the 11 being a bluer version of the 8, you basically have a redder version of the 10. So, what more could you ask for? Well, to answer that question, pretty much, Nerf actually went as far as to giving us a few other things to this blaster. First of all, this blaster actually comes with its own stock attachment. So unlike with the Ultra 10, where it basically gives us a stock adapter, an option to use any kind of stock that we could choose from, this one actually comes with its own particular stock. One that is in fact capable of holding an Ultra Dart magazine. And the thing about it is that with this blaster, you actually get two magazines, like with the 12. But, believe it or not, both of these magazines will actually hold pinpointer darts. So, the thing about it is that this is a redder version of the Ultra 10. It comes with its own stock, it comes with two different magazines, and it also comes with Ultra pinpointer darts as the default ammo selection. So, you know what? Idea after idea after idea, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, Hasbro really is in fact willing to try and fulfill anybody's request. So, who even knows? Will we have an Ultra 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20? I guess we'll see what happens down the line. But you know what though, in terms of giving this blaster a ranking, I not only feel like this is a great example out there for what we could potentially see in the future when it comes to Ultra blasters, at this rate pretty much people will probably hopefully give up on the lies and all the falsified claims that are being put together against the Ultra line, and hopefully we'll be able to see a lot more. But the Ultra 13, the way I see it, is also going to be going into a B. And so, that is pretty much what you see right here. The Ultra tier list. From S to F, we pretty much got nothing in F, but we do have everything put together in A, C, B, D, and S, pretty much. So it's a nice spread around from the best to the ones that I don't necessarily see fit. So, with blasters that are as amazing as the 9 and the 3, and with blasters that probably are not necessarily anywhere good, like the 1 or the 8, it pretty much goes to show that Nerf has also given us some trial and error that happens to pretty much show the full course that has taken place since day 1 in October 2019. Pretty much the same exact amount of time that has passed since a pandemic has come around. And so, I don't know about you if that's probably coincidental or not, but you know what? This is quite a ride. But the thing is, there's probably other tier lists that I can go ahead and put together. Especially on account of the fact that there are a lot of lineups that Nerf has. And so, if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.